Hi, everybody. This is Rob Packard from Medical Device Academy, and today we're going to talk about what happens if you actually have a cybersecurity incident. So, we have some requirements from the FDA now for cybersecurity controls. They have a guidance that they released back in October, and in that guidance, there are a lot of new requirements for the documentation of your cybersecurity. But it isn't just documentation of cybersecurity for your medical device. You also are now required to do testing of cybersecurity. So that involves penetration testing. It also involves vulnerability testing that would be done even before the penetration testing begins. But when you go through all the documentation that the FDA requires for your submission, one of the things that jumps out at me is a list of 8 controls that the FDA wants us to include in the actual submission. And they say these 8 data or these 8 cybersecurity controls have to be included in the design of your software, and they want to know where they can be found. Well, the first couple of them don't seem all that unusual. Authentication, so like a 2-factor authentication where they send you an email and you type in the code, or they send it to your phone and you type in the code. And authorization, making sure somebody's authorized to access the system, making sure they have a password and ID. Cryptography, so you make sure that everything is encrypted in your system. These are all pretty mundane requirements that we probably already have. But when I get down to number 6, event detection and logging, now we're getting into something that really is quite different. Now we have to have, as part of our cybersecurity controls for your device, we have to actually have a system that will detect when the system has a security breach. And there are cybersecurity companies out there that specialize in this. It's called MRP. So if you may be familiar with the MRP acronym for Material Resource Planning, but there's another MRP for management and management of resource. No, MDR. Sorry, not M. That's why I was having trouble with that acronym. MDR for management of detection and response. So when you have a cybersecurity event, you need the system to actually detect the event, because not everything will be detected by a human being. You need an electronic response for when somebody's trying to hack into this system. And you need a response plan for how you're going to respond when that occurs. Sometimes they don't actually want to get the person out of the system right away. They want to contain them and log what they're doing so they can find out who's attacking and how they attacked it. So some of this ability to detect things is a new feature that you're going to have as a software requirement in your software requirement specification. In fact, excuse me, all 8 of those cybersecurity controls that the FDA wants you to have included, and they ask you where they can be found, those should be part of your SRS. But this detection requirement is a little bit more challenging. Because now not only do we have to have a way of detecting it in the software, but we're going to have to actually respond to each of those. We have to have a procedure or a work instruction on how are we going to respond when this software actually detects something happening, and what system do we use. So what most people do when they have a new requirement, they add a new procedure. So whatever it is, the solution is a new procedure. We need a new procedure for that. And if the FDA requires you shall have a procedure for this and you don't have one, what choice do you have? But in the response part of this, so you have a security incident that occurs, the system automatically detects the response or detects the breach of security in the software. But now what do you do to respond to that? And how are you going to document that response? What's going to be your documentation of that plan? So one of the things that the FDA references is a guidance document. It's called, it's a NIST special, what do they call it? Special report. Sorry about this. Special publication. So a NIST NIST special publication, and it's special publication 800-61. So if you purchase our work instruction for cybersecurity, that's already saved in there, so you don't have to go hunt it down. But these requirements are actually they go beyond just the cybersecurity risk controls. They actually have this guidance telling you how to respond to events that occur and what information you should be logging. And they actually have a whole bunch of different use cases identified for security breaches. I think there are 11 or 12 different use cases that are described. I'm seeing here if I can just get down to the section in the document where they actually list that. So these are after handling, how to handle an incident that occurs. And the reason why I'm not going to find it quickly is because this document is so long. It's a 79-page document. But in Annex A, they give you a bunch of different scenarios, and there are 11 scenarios. So working backwards, say number 11, unknown wireless access point. So that could be one. Peer-to-peer file sharing could be an issue. Anonymous threats. So each one of these, disappearing hosts, unauthorized access to payroll records, unknown exfiltration, stolen documents, a worm or distributed denial of service. So a DDoS, a denial of service, are one of the more common types of cybersecurity attacks, or a domain name system DNS server denial of service. So that would be another type of denial of service. So each of these is a different scenario that's listed in here, and they talk about how it occurs, and they talk about what you should do in response to each one of these scenarios and what kinds of controls should be placed in this case, and what information you should be looking for when you do your investigation. So what I was looking at is we could just create a whole brand new procedure here that says do all these things just like this guidance document. But we already have a process for handling responses to cybersecurity events. It's called our CAPA process. Anything goes wrong in your quality system, whether it's an issue with your product or it's an issue with your quality system itself, even a billing issue, they all can go into your CAPA process. The problem is people need to be trained on how to write a response plan and what data to collect as part of the investigation when they write up a CAPA. So if you're not an expert in cybersecurity, you're going to have trouble doing the investigation, gathering the right information, and your response plan isn't going to be adequate. So the person that you assign to this should be trained on this NIST special publication, 800-61 Rev 2. But they don't have to have a whole brand new system in order to record it. So you can actually go to this guidance document and you can see in there, this is the information they recommend you gather. And this is what we recommend that is included in your response plan. And you can make sure those are included in your CAPA plan. But you don't need a new form to do that. Now, you could create one, yes, for a complete, to make sure that nobody can make a mistake, you can create a special new form that says this is all the information you gather. And then you could have another document that says these are all the things that we're going to do to respond to that problem. So whatever security breach occurred, this is how we're going to respond to this incident, this security incident. But you could do the same thing in a CAPA form. It's a fairly generic form that has a place for you to write your investigation, identify what the root cause is, corrections, containment measures that you're going to take, and what corrective actions you're going to make to prevent the problem from reoccurring. So in the investigation, you would gather that information from the logging of the incident that occurred, interviewing other people, doing some cyber forensic research to figure out where did they access, where did they come from, what kind of attack was it, what time did it occur, what was the type of unit, if there was hardware or software involved that they were using. You would gather all that as part of your investigation. Then you would determine what was the vulnerability that allowed them to get in. So now you've identified a vulnerability. That is your root cause. Or maybe somebody didn't follow a procedure that they were supposed to make sure the system was secure. So didn't include malware on the device, shared a password with somebody they shouldn't have, somebody hacked a list of passwords or something. So these are all different ways that somebody could have hacked into a system. You need to investigate that and document that as your investigation of root cause, and then what the root cause is of this incident. And then the next section would be containment. How are we going to contain this problem? Somebody asked, is there any standard procedure for a CAPA procedure? So yes, in the ISO 1345 standard, they actually have a whole section on CAPA. It's 8.5.2 and 8.5.3. Corrective action is 8.52 and 8.53 is preventive action. This is how do you document a very specialized one? Well, when you go to containment, you're going to have to look at what is the best way to contain this problem. You're also going to want to notify people. So just like if you had a bad device, you had a damaged device, or you had something that was non-sterile going out to people, you would notify them. You would issue a recall. You would bring that product back. You would quarantine everything in your warehouse. The same thing has to happen with virtual assets and any digital assets that you have, whether it's a mobile device, whether it's a PC, whether it's software in a medical device or software as a medical device. Those are digital assets that you have to contain, notify them of them. And even though they aren't going to ship anything back that's virtual, you still might have to do that same kind of containment measures. So you could issue non-conforming material reports. You could issue RMAs. You could issue recalls. All those things would be the same things that you would do for a physical product. There's nothing wrong with doing that for digital assets as well. The next step is going to be corrections. So what are you going to do to maybe recover the data? So you have a recovery system for any data that was lost. Maybe you delete how they hacked in. So if they had stolen somebody's password and ID, maybe you create a new one so they can no longer access that way and delete the old. Maybe there's other things you can do, changing a port, maybe taking out a piece of code that was in there that was creating the vulnerability and replacing it with a patch that should have been installed but wasn't. Those are all possibilities. Sometimes we have customers, we tell them, hey, there's this new patch, there's this new update to the software for security, but they don't upload it on their system. So you force that to happen. You make them update their software with the new patch. Now that the correction has been implemented, now what kind of corrective actions are we going to take as well? So for the corrective actions, these would be things to prevent it from happening again. So how are we going to make sure people install the updates in a timely manner? How are we going to keep track of who is installed and who hasn't, so we know where the vulnerabilities are going to lie? Maybe we have to do something to terminate service temporarily, put a pause on their service digitally, so they can't use the system until they do the update. That's something that we might have to do. Just like if you have your registration on your car and you don't update your registration, don't go for your inspection, you don't get the new sticker, and now cop pulls you over and gives you a ticket. Same kind of thing can be done digitally. You can have somebody, sorry, for the time being, your service is paused until you implement this software, and it's for security reasons. So those are things that we can force. But do you need a separate form, a separate procedure, a separate work instruction just for how to do that? And the answer is yes and no. The form part isn't so much important because you can have a blank form and fill in the right information. What is important is you're familiar with this guidance document. So this NIST SP 800-61 Rev 2. Number two, you have people trained on it that are monitoring security of your system, and they are the people that are specifically assigned to do an investigation if a security incident occurs, and they write the investigation, they write the root cause, they do the containment measures, they do the corrections, and they do the corrective action long term. And it's probably not going to be one person, it's probably going to be a group of people that are necessary. You might even have to bring in an outside firm in order to do it properly. But it doesn't have to be in a separate form. Now, what you can do is you can take this guidance document where it lists bulleted points. These are all the things you should consider, and you can use that as a checklist and to make sure that you haven't forgotten anything when you're doing your investigation. It's just like an auditor having an audit checklist. Make sure I check all these things because these are requirements. Nothing different there. We had another comment that was made here. Um, they said they're going to make a bold claim. It sounds like there's an overlap with use errors and cybersecurity threats that rely on social engineering as a vulnerability, especially with credential safeguards. So, in all of our, whenever we talk with a client about post-market surveillance, I always try to say to them, you should be asking, what are they using the device for? What indications are they using the device for? What accessories have you started using for the device? What kind of difficulties are you having with it? Have you noticed any problems with it? But we've also added some things on that are specific to cybersecurity. So have you had any software bugs that you've identified? Have you identified any vulnerabilities? Have you had any cybersecurity incidents? So those will all be questions you might want to ask if it's a digital system. And then to this person's point, if you have anything that's human factors related. So is there anything difficult to use? Is there anything that's difficult to understand? Are there any use errors that you're aware of? Ask those questions as part of your post-market surveillance. So don't just ask. My favorite one is the customer satisfaction questions, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like our product and how likely are you to recommend it to somebody else? That's customer satisfaction. That's not post-market surveillance. It's a little itty bitty tiny piece of post-market surveillance, but it's probably the least important. It'll tell you whether people are likely to buy more of your product and recommend it to others, but it doesn't tell you whether there are any safety issues with your device, which is one of the primary reasons we want people to do post-market surveillance. It's for safety. We want to know if there are any safety concerns with the device. Are there any performance issues with the device? So that's why we want you to go out and gather that post-market data and then either fix your device or develop a new, better device to address those deficiencies in safety and performance, not satisfaction. Somebody else put down here, they love the 2-year-old version of Evernote to organize the regulatory guidances, and they forced me to a new version. So, and the reason why they did that is probably because you had all your passwords in there. And I may or may not be guilty of putting passwords in a place where people would obviously look. We put them in Evernote, we put them in Google Drive, we put them in Dropbox, we put them in our phone. And then somebody gets access to that and they have everything. And we probably even labeled it passwords to help them out so they can find it easier. So this happens all the time. So this person says, my passwords are only in LastPass. Well, that's very helpful. So now anybody that gets access to LastPass will be able to find them quickly. There are some great solutions out there that are much more secure, that will help you and will prevent somebody from using your old password and will help you get into the system. But that's just one little itty bitty tiny piece of what we need to worry about. Most of the time when I talk with clients, one of their biggest issues is companies not upgrading. When they identify a vulnerability and they fix a vulnerability, there's a patch that needs to be implemented, and the customers may not want to, because that means they have to do a lot of changes in their system as well. We have another comment here. If Google can't remember password, then neither can I. Yeah, that's probably true. We all can't remember these really long 15 character uh, uh, digits or 15 character numbers that are passwords in there, and they have alphanumeric symbols, no repeats of characters, no words in there. It makes it quite difficult for people to guess, but it also makes it much more likely we can't remember and we have to write it down somewhere so somebody can find that. So we have to deal with that. But um, to bring it back to the question that I asked at the beginning of this, if we have a security incident occur, what are we supposed to do and where do we write that information down? And so the first thing you want to do, it's no different from a complaint or an adverse event. Um, somebody calls tech support and says they have a problem, you want to get as much information as you can as quickly as you can. And so you need to know, what is the IP address, what is the serial number of the unit you're using, what is your service that you're using there. Are you on a Wi-Fi router? Are you on a network inside your company? Is it public? Is it private? These are some of the things that you need to know right away if you're investigating this. So having people in tech support that are trained to a certain extent to gather some of this initial information excuse me, would be very helpful. So if I were going to break down what things different people should be trained on, the section at the very beginning of your CAPA form, where you gather information about patient and injury and date and hospital and things like that, you need to adapt that to, these are the things I need to gather for security incidents. And so it's different. But it can still go in a CAPA form. There's nothing wrong with that. We're not filling out a complaint form because this isn't necessarily a deficiency or a malfunction of the device. This could just be a security incident. And so the device might have been working perfectly, but it might have been something else. So we need to gather this information someplace. And I think that one of the easiest places to put that information would be in a CAPA record. So you're indicating this is what occurred, and then we're going to go do the investigation on that. The investigation would be more heavily trained people, but if we can train the people in tech support or customer service what information to gather, sort of a little checklist for them, make sure you gather these things, that might be very helpful for them to gather that information in a timely manner. I don't know if I have any more comments here in the, no, doesn't look like there are any others. So I'll leave you with one last thing. If you're interested in this, if you have digital technology that has software as a medical device or software in a medical device, and there's some sort of internet connection, you're going to have to address cybersecurity in your software. So if you've already got a cybersecurity procedure, you also need to consider how you're going to handle security incident responses. And so we have a brand new work instruction we're releasing next week on Thursday. We already have the procedure and the forms written, but we're making last minute edits to integrate that better with our Kappa process so people know how to respond to that. And in addition to that, we're going to do a webinar and training on that on next Thursday. So I'll be doing that. And you can actually go on the website and purchase it now, so you'll get access to the folder and you'll get invited to the webinar next Thursday. And if you're interested more on the front end, making sure you develop those security controls into your software, that's our WI007 that we have. And Bhumika's going to actually be doing, is in the process of recording a training for that should be available, I think, the following week. So a little bit of information for you to go gather if you need help in cybersecurity or incident response plans. So thank you very much for participating. If you found this helpful, please like and share it with others. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.